officers, members of the Central Executive, the General Council, members of the Tobago Island Council, mayors, chairmen, aldermen, specially invited guests, members of this PNM family, members of the media, fellow citizens all. It is always with a deep feeling of humility and great expectation that I look forward to the excitement of meeting, greeting, and addressing you at our party's annual convention. This, the 40th of which we have embarked on today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been on this journey since Dr. Williams, our first Prime Minister, guided us to want independence and to undertake to act responsibly for the future. And he did so at a time when the annual budget was less than $200 million. Since then, we have come a long way and have made significant progress in most areas. It has not always been smooth, but you know, we have ups and downs. We've had our good times and our not so good times. But on every occasion, we have demonstrated an ability and a willingness to rise to the challenges, and this time is no different. As I pondered on the nation's current adverse economic circumstances under which I am preparing the address for today, my spirit persisted in engaging me in the words of wisdom of renowned international philosophers of yesteryear, which stubbornly reverberated in my mind. Plato reminded me of the old saying, and it's this: adversity is the mother of invention. Plato also reminded us to be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a harder battle. What deep and meaningful words. Words that we can emulate on the distance. I was also reminded of the words of the first century poet, that Roman poet Horace, who since his time in the first century had this to say. He said, adversity has the effect of eliciting talents which in prosperous circumstances would have lain dormant. If ever Trinidad and Tobago needed to embrace these legendary words of wisdom, that time is now, right here, right now. For it is when rapidly declining economic conditions befall a people and times become hard that we draw on our precious reserves, pull from the wealth of our own illustrious past, and call forth the absolute best of our God-given competences, attributes of resourcefulness, of courage, of commitment, of dedication, creativity, and honesty. We reflect on the principles of life inherited from our parents and foreparents, and draw as judiciously as we can from the abundance of their noble legacies. Legacies from which we can all benefit, especially under extenuating circumstances. Ladies and gentlemen, prior to assuming office as your Prime Minister 2 years ago, I asked myself a series of searching questions. Here are 4 of the many questions I asked myself. The first was, how does a country deal with a can of worms and a bed of thorns uninterruptedly constructed for a people by a demitting, dishonored administration? The second question was, What happens when the new administration assumes governance, particularly during a period of unprecedented economic adversity? The third was, how does the leader of the new administration engineer his decision-making machinery? And the fourth question was, can Trinidad and Tobago benefit from seeing how other countries, other nations emerge successfully from similar political atrocities and political situations? Ladies and gentlemen, after deep and honest introspection and widespread consultations with worthy advisors, I arrived at a number of clear conclusions. First among them was that the road to strong economic recovery would be winding, elusive, treacherous, painstaking, and sometimes even lonely. Secondly, that it will require patience, tolerance, resilience, dexterity, and determination. Frequently, I am reminded of two other intellectually sound words of wisdom. One was written by Dow Konikan in his book, Wealth of All Africans, How Every African Can Live the Life of Their Dreams. And he had this to say: pride in your country should not come after your country becomes great. Your country becomes great because of your pride in it. The other was the wisdom written by the distinguished Ghanaian Nana Damour, and he said, Rome was not built in a day. A common statement we make from time to time under very appropriate circumstances. But we fail to appreciate that Rome was eventually built, he said. The question then was, if Rome was not built in a day, when was it built? And the answer, he said, it was built day by day. Ladies and gentlemen, if we are to emerge triumphantly out of the depths of economic adversity into which our society has been plunged, I am convinced that all of us are duty-bound to encourage one another to take fullest advantage of the opportunities presented by our harsh economic times. We must do so by maximizing the strength of character and the full potential of which each of us is capable. In other words, we must, as far as we are able to, convert adversity into opportunity, explore ways and means to do things differently, expediently, and expeditiously. In short, we have to learn to do more with less. A new society of Trinidad and Tobago beckons, and we must all join together in shaping and molding it into what it is to become. If we are to agree with these arguments and sentiments, then we need to embark on this journey by saying, the future begins today. As side by side, we make our journey towards the goal of sustainable development, so eloquently espoused by my colleague in the presentation of our nation's Vision 2030 plan, let us acknowledge but not harp on our shortcomings. Instead, let us capitalize and find hope on the progress which we have made and of which we are capable. The national assignment must be making progress toward prosperity. For 5 years and 90 days, we had exhibited the most painstaking degree of patience and tolerance, bearing upon our broken backs the ultimate in injustices and inequities inflicting upon a trusting nation. An unimaginable abomination that has left us frequently bowing our heads in shame and utter disgrace and wonderment. That is what we put out of office, and it's from there we look to create new hope. But on the other hand, we in the PNM know of one brand of governance, the brand that makes us free and proud. Free because we steadfastly honor the tenets of honesty, integrity, decency, and truth. And the truth is that it will make us free. And proud of who we are as a nation, what we represent, and above all, proud of our deep roots and unparalleled track record of achievements which have branded Trinidad and Tobago under the PNM the jewel of the Caribbean. PNM brand of governance is bountiful and beautiful to those who treasure forthrightness and who are not afraid of the facts as they exist. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to fight back, to restore our nation's honor, our nation's well-being, and our nation's integrity, and fix our nation's future. While the dissident attempt to rewrite history and frown on our restorative successes and fight among themselves in the forlorn hope of returning to resume their feeding frenzy and nefarious assault upon our treasury, PNM continues to march on, undeterred by their reckless machinations and their open and unbridled obstructionist behavior. The nation is fed up of their incredible lack of patriotism and abhors their unpalatable approach to parliamentary decorum and their debilitating display of undemocratic indulgences. Ladies and gentlemen, there has never been a more critical time than right now to focus on the PNM's roadmap to sustainable development. We have a plan to take us to 2030 and beyond. Vision 2030 is not only a PNM initiative, it is the nation's way forward, the assurance of an enhanced standard of living for all, irrespective of class, color, creed, race, or political persuasion. Vision 2030 knows no boundaries. It is saying to all and sundry, we have heard you. And working together, there is very little which we can't accomplish. So we say, like we have said, let's do this. And now the time has come to give our nation the chance it deserves, the chance to stand again on solid ground, full of confidence that the road ahead is focused and unambiguous, safe and in good hands, that there is opportunity for our young people to follow their dreams and set their sights on high, even in these less than favorable economic situations. Well then, you may ask, what makes the PNM so special? What makes the PNM so different that you will want to hear us and that you will want to stand with us? Ladies and gentlemen, here is your answer. The nation of Trinidad and Tobago was created, nurtured, and developed by the PNM, and now we have matured somewhat. Virtually every nation-building initiative worthy of emulation and adulation came forth from the PNM and some PNM initiative. We have dealt with great difficulty before, and we have made good our commitment to always put the national interest first above all other. We remain committed to those principles. Those who have followed can do no more than build on what is already there. Like Rome, this nation, which we all cherish, was not built in a day, but day by day, each day was a PNM success story. My dear fellow party members, fellow citizens, the skillful management of our current difficulties and the next generation of progress are in PNM hands. You don't have to figure it out all at once or expect it to be perfect in one sitting. You just have to stay the course. Stay connected to the fundamentals of self-belief, which have guided the PNM and the nation over the past half a century. Now more than ever, we need discipline. Now more than ever, we need to be tolerant. And certainly now more than ever, we need to be more productive. As members of the PNM, we often need to be reminded that we are part of a greater whole, that we are not alone in our aspirations for decent work with job security, industrial peace, justice, and equal opportunity for all. We are not alone. The entire nation aspires to all this. These are some of the great ideals for which we stand. We demonstrated that in our recent encounter called Spotlight, when we met at the Hyatt. And then that was prior to a national budget. We shared the stage with many a contrary view, confident in the rectitude of our cause and in the options that we have chosen and advanced to the nation. Ladies and gentlemen, from the first day we resumed office in 2015, your government has demonstrated diligence and prudence in the careful discharge of your mandate. We have championed the philosophy of sound fiscal management, which has resulted in our stabilizing this troubled economy. And we are now on the road to some measure of restoration, anticipating growth and sustainable development, spreading the burden of the inevitable adjustment equitably across all frontiers, bearably on all shoulders. Let us not live in fear. Let us not live in denial. Our economic challenges, which began to come into view in 2014, are not hidden in dark closets, nor are they insurmountable. Like so many other countries, they are there for all to see and to be acted upon. The one annoyance is that ours has been an exacerbated one by the wild and wanton indiscretions of the previous UNC administration, who behaved like there was no tomorrow. In fact, it might very well be that they genuinely believe that there is no future for us as a people, and as such, they should grab as much as they can as quickly as they could before they take off. The PNM harbors no such thoughts. We believe and confidently assert that there is a bright future ahead for our nation, where there is opportunity for participation and advancement of our families and our communities. Yes, there might be fog over our economic situation. There might continue to be economic uncertainty in some quarters now, but this too can be defeated by that high, bright sun called the resilient spirit of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. One thing that may be a feature of our national character is how easily we forget. Let me remind the nation that soon after the 2015 budget was presented in October 2014, the period of prosperity began to recede. And by the turn of the year, there were calls for that budget to be immediately revised in response to rapidly declining prices for oil and gas, which we don't set. Those prices are set by the international marketplace. This development marked a period of intense curtailment in our revenues and significantly reduced our ability to sustain some patterns of expenditure to which we had become, and I dare say, to which we believe we are entitled. Taxes from oil companies have declined from 25 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars in 2008 to an unbelievable $472 million in 2017. I want to repeat that. In 2008, profits from taxes in the oil companies brought us $25 billion. In 2017, we got less than $500 million. A decline of over 95%. The other energy sector taxes and royalties have dropped from 15 billion in 2010 to 2.1 billion in 2017, a decline of 87%. At the same time, transfers and subsidies, and by that I mean the payments that the government is required to make towards water, electricity, pensions and grants and all other kinds of expenditure like that, have increased from 17 billion in 2007 to 27.8 billion in 2016, and that's an increase of 64%. At the same time that our revenues have collapsed, as I've just mentioned, the government's commitment to expenditure and subsidies rose dramatically. That is the assignment that was handed to us on September 9, 2015. Under these conditions, fellow citizens, wisdom dictates that we must decrease total expenditure from the all-time high of 62 billion in 2015 to where we have just put a budget in the Parliament of just about 50 billion. This rather unpleasant but very necessary assignment fell to your PNM government to make the adjustments with care and compassion so that any associated pain as anticipated would be minimized as far as we are able to. That is what we have done. That is what we have been doing. In spite of the revenue impediments that I've just mentioned, our net official foreign reserves still stand at 8.5 billion US dollars, representing 10 months of import cover. Unbelievable, but true. Although we had been forced to make withdrawals from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund within the last 2 years to manage this downward expenditure pattern, the net asset value as at August 2017 of this fund stood at US dollars $5.7 billion. This was better than the net asset value of 5.6 billion where it stood in September 2015. Point I'm making is that even though we had withdrawn from the stabilization component of that fund to tide us through the last 2 years, the circumstances have been such that the fund is still today a little more than it was when we first entered it. And that is as a result of the fund continuing to earn very well and being managed very well. We are seeing positive indicators in the slowing down of retrenchment at the rate where we receive notices of 1,134 persons to be retrenched over the period January 2017 to September 2017, compared with 2,384 persons for the same period in 2016. For the period September 2015 to September 2017, we have received to date retrenchment notices of 4,829 persons to be retrenched. Against this background, we have seen a progressive decline in unemployment from 4.4% in the second quarter of 2016 to 4% in the third quarter of 2016 to 3.6% in the fourth quarter of 2016. As we continue to monitor the unemployment situation and support the maintenance of lower-end job opportunities through the continuation of programs like CPEP, URP, and OJT, we are forever mindful of underemployment and the frustration of those persons who would have made the effort to prepare themselves to function in more productive and better paying jobs. We are working towards economic growth that would give such persons opportunities for better paying jobs. According to the IMF projections, our economy is expected to grow at a rate of 3.6% in 2018 and 3.2% in 2019. These are targets anticipated by external analysts, and the projected outcomes which they forecast are those which we would not at this time quarrel with at this stage. And if we accomplish those positions, we will be a lot better off than we are today. As we are called upon to govern in this period of austerity and forced economic contraction, the fallout of sustained revenue shrinkage as part of our management approach, we have to work with a plan and we have to prioritize. And the plan is this. A, reduce expenditure over time in a steady and systematic way. B, preserve as many job opportunities in the public sector as the new circumstances can sustain, and encourage job expansion in the private sector. C, maintain some expenditure on a development program to create jobs and to continue developing the country's physical and economic infrastructure, even though times are hard. D, re-establish growth in the economy. E, improve tax revenue and other revenue collection. F, reduce subsidies. G, diversify the economy through initiating and supporting new initiatives and awakening stagnant efforts like agriculture and tourism. H, reduce the consumption of foreign exchange. I, eliminate waste and be totally intolerant to all aspects of corruption. J, watch the public debt. Those are the 10 points in the plan of action which we are pursuing. And we say, number 11, do all of these at the same time. That is what is going on in Trinidad and Tobago today. This work program as laid out here is operated on an expenditure management approach which identifies certain specific priorities, meaning whatever the circumstances, these priorities lay claim to the first call of whatever is available. Number one, healthcare delivery. Notwithstanding how often we complain about the shortcomings in the health system and with respect to healthcare delivery, it is without serious contradiction that public expenditure preserves in this country a robust healthcare delivery effort for all our citizens. Public expenditure provides 3,100 hospital beds in 10 hospitals that provide full service. A range of medical services are available at 110 health centers across the country. These facilities are manned by 1,913 doctors, 6,127 nurses, and 6,583 support staff of all kinds. The medical supplies alone to sustain this operation amounts to just under $1 billion per year. This expenditure and the payment of the staff for the overall healthcare service in the health sector will remain highest priority item. We also have to pay attention to the fact that we are committed to bringing into operation the Cuba Hospital, an additional facility which we intend to integrate into the health service in 2018. We also have within our sight, for the not too distant future, 2 new facilities currently under construction, the Arima Hospital and the Point 14 Hospital, both of which are about 40% complete at this time. And we are anticipating some major upgrade of some kind to the Sangre Grande Hospital for the area of the eastern counties. We also have a central block in Port of Spain Hospital with over 500 beds, where there's an engineering report of 2009 which has indicated that that building is structurally unsound. And today, as part of the work program of this government in a time of significant financial difficulty, this government has as a priority to rectify that situation before disaster befalls us. Priority number 2, education. Education has been our #1 expenditure item for all the years, but has been challenged recently by rapid expansion in spending on national security responses. Today, we have 121,000 students in primary school, 81,000 in secondary schools, and about 55,000 in tertiary institutions. We continue to make them and their teachers our #1 priority, since their dedication and their education are the only guarantee we can have for the security of our nation's future. In order to sustain this priority in this period of austerity, we have budgeted to spend $10 million on textbooks in the coming year. 2 years ago, we were spending $20 million a year on textbooks. The Minister of Education has discovered that that is not necessary. The $10 million will provide enough textbooks for our children to be satisfied. We are spending $200 million in the next year on the school feeding program. That is 20% less than was being spent before. But we know that our children will be fed because we are taking out 20% of waste and mismanagement in the school feeding program. We are spending $60 million on grants to primary schools. And we are providing school transport for 17,000 students who rely on the government-provided school bus transport system. We are providing $720 million to UWI and $200 million to UTT. These all represent some reduction from the highs of 2014 to 2015. But in the current partitioning of the national cake, these ancillary allocations, along with the untouched payments of 7,000 teachers in primary schools and over 5,000 teachers in secondary schools, reflect a highest priority which will remain so. It is the view of most citizens that national security should be #1 priority. Because if you're dead, then you're not here to accept anything else. But we regard national security as one of the priority items. It is the view of most citizens that we must feel a sense of safety. It should be a view of all citizens, and it's the government's assignment that we must all feel safe in Trinidad and Tobago. For the last 2 decades, this country has been challenged by the criminal element, both local and international. We don't make guns and ammunition here, nor do we produce cocaine and heroin. Yet the illegal business of these items have chronically infected our society to the point where whole communities are under siege and the entire nation is on the lookout for the next event or the next outrage. Many young people have fallen prey to the gang culture and the use of violence in the quest for easy money or settling scores, and that threatens the peace and social stability of the nation. Additionally, a very small minority of our citizens has answered the call to international religious terrorism, and a few remain students of this dangerous doctrine, posing greater strain on our security services and our national budget. Even so, we have no choice but to fund the necessary responses which cannot be postponed nor delayed in the most circumstances. National security demands to be an item of priority on the expenditure profile. Notwithstanding the regular hollow bleatings of those of our political colleagues who had 5 years and they had a shot at grappling with this beast, but only succeeded in leaving it hale, hearty, and well-fed. Their idea of dealing with it was increasing the number of national security ministers, and you can count them on one hand and go on to the other hand. And they also thought that dealing with it was in billion-dollar cancellations of equipment and programs. And of course, the highest priority of dealing with national security was hiring a telephone operator called Reshmi Ramnarayan to manage our security intelligence agency. They want us to forget those things. That was their record in managing national security. So you understand why they ought not to be advisors to the government of Trinidad and Tobago today. In the last 25 months, your PNM government has remained focused and proactive in its broad response to widespread criminal behavior, which has been sweeping this country from well before September 9, 2015. How many of you remember the killings inside the Prime Minister's compound at St. Anne's when the UNC was in government? How many of you remember live sport and the role of Kamla Prasad Bisesa and her government that they played in creating that monster, the tentacles of which are still wrapped around this country today? Even as we are responding, we have only just completed a comprehensive national security policy and strategy implementation plan. Only recently, the National Security Council approved the counterterrorism policy and strategy. In developing our plan of action for countering violent extremism, we have established partnerships with the United States, the United Kingdom, and international agencies. We are currently accessing training and capacity building from the United Kingdom, and we are grateful for this and other similar assistance. As part of our cooperative approach, a senior Defense Force officer was posted to the Joint Interagency Task Force of the United States. And from this initiative, it resulted in one of the largest drug busts in the Caribbean, where recently we intercepted $800 million in one shipment of cocaine. We now have cleared the way with the United States to implement the Personal Identification, Secure Comparison, and Evaluation System, PISES. This system is now to be implemented at Piarco before year end, as well as the Arthur Napoleon Robinson Airport in Tobago and at the port of entry at Cedros. This system gives us the ability to more efficiently track the movement of persons across our borders. The security services have focused on some additional initiatives to prevent murders. These include the police service and the defense force in combined operations, establishing base camps in Laventille, in Enterprise, and Chaguanas. They have stepped up patrols and have been focusing on the arrest of primary offenders. These are intensified efforts that seize illegal firearms, and you would have been seeing some improved results. The police has also established a cold case team to pick up and follow those areas where there have been murders which have not been solved. The Organized Crime and Intelligence Unit was officially launched on the 15th of September. It is the assignment of this coordinated unit to dismantle, suppress, and prosecute members of organized criminal groups, focusing on specific criminal targets and enterprises. It is now highly operational, and already there have been several successes so far. With respect to cybersecurity, we have just established a computer security incident response team. The Ramsaran Committee has completed its manpower audit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and has submitted a comprehensive report which was received by the Cabinet and is on its way to Parliament for public examination by the Joint Select Committee of Parliament. Its contents and recommendations would shape the debate and actions with respect to building and sustaining an effective police service, which will always remain the main line of defense of citizens in the face of the onslaught of those who are criminal and who have criminal intent and who reside in our midst. On the infrastructure side, work is proceeding on the construction of the Sherburne Police Station in Tobago to replace Old Grange Station. The Roxborough Station is under construction, and preparations are in an advanced stage for the St. Clair and Carenage Police Station. We are in the process of establishing the DNA database and are doing some improvements in the prisons, which would include the construction of video conferencing facilities at the Remand Yard Prison. We are working on new fire station plans, soon to be going out for tender for Aruca, San Fernando, Point Fortin, Pinal, and Scarborough. Priority number 4, social and family services. As we identify priorities in order to respond to the changed circumstances, we have kept focus on the fact that it is not only about arithmetic. These numbers are not simply 2 and 2 make 4. It is about people. How our policies affect people. How our policy responses will affect people, particularly those at the base of the income pyramid and those who are least able to look after themselves. It is within this context that social and family service allocation remain priorities and have not been reduced, except for waste, abuse, and corrupt practice, as we have made widespread adjustment in which we have been and continue to be engaged. As of September 17, 2017, we cater for 93,677 citizens who receive the Senior Citizens Grant, all of whom are guaranteed up to $3,500 a month. This comes at a cost of $3.5 billion. Additionally, we support 25,728 other persons or families with monthly payments ranging from $1,150 to $1,750 on public assistance grant. This is maintained at a cost of $400 million a year. A further $500 million is made available to assist 23,625 citizens who benefit from the Disability Assistance Grant Program. Outside of this commitment, the state also provides another $90 million in the form of general assistance grants geriatric adolescent partnership for home care, as well as subventions for non-government organizations and statutory boards. Ladies and gentlemen, even in these our difficult economic times, this level of care and attention to the needy and the deserving will continue as a priority. Additionally, from time to time, we as a nation are called upon to respond to acts of nature which frequently wreak havoc on some individuals and communities anywhere in this country. In such times, we must and we do find an extra portion to bring relief to those so affected. Last June, we had to respond to the effects of Tropical Storm Brett. As the waters receded, staff of the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, along with local government, quickly assessed the situation. They received 3,062 claims, of which 1,419 were deemed to be ineligible. And I want to repeat that for the benefit of those who like to go and parrot and shout around this country that the government has not cared and has not done anything for those who are in need. The public servants scrutinized 3,062 applicants for help. 1,419 were found to be persons who did not qualify. And 1,643 qualified and were approved at a cost of $10,819,000. More recently, we have had to respond to even more severe and widespread flooding in mid-October. Once again, the state had been called upon to bring some relief and further support to those affected. As of 6 November, the relevant staff conducted 2,615 assessments in the affected areas, and payments from an emergency allocation of $35 million are being made at this time. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, even in the most challenging of times, Mother Trinidad and Tobago gives of her best to all her children. The only reward she might ask is for an acknowledgement of her continued sacrifice on behalf of all her children whom she loves so very much. Item number 5, which is something that, while we can pick on education, pick on health, pick on national security, pick on family services as our top 4 priorities, there is one that we have to put in the top priority if we are to remain whole as a nation, and that is the public debt. The public debt, if you look at the national budget, you will see it up there at top, makes first claim on any money that we have. Even as I have outlined our plan of action and have presented a group of priorities, there are many other areas which cannot be just left behind or taken off the table. There are many other wider responsibilities which must be attended. As we set out to bring about this balance in our actions, we have to tell you that we can only meet the projected lower levels of expenditure with the involvement of significant borrowings to close the shortfall. In 2014-2015, the total net public sector debt was $79.3 billion. 1 year later, 2015-2016, that public debt rose to $88.3 billion. 1 year later, 2016-2017, that public debt is now $92.8 billion. And still, we have to borrow again in 2018 to keep the commitments of our priorities. I have just made to keep the essentials going. So when you hear the wealthy opposition calling on and demanding for this and demanding for that, I want you to tell them two things. Item number one, tell them that the state is not as wealthy as they are, and therefore is not in a position to be as generous as they could be to their families, or as they would like the state to be. Secondly, tell them that you want them to tell you where they would want the money taken from in the budget to be put by where they want it spelled on. And if you have time, tell them a third thing, or ask them a third thing. Ask them when they bring in the money back. It is only when they answer those particular questions that you will be able to know what is good advice and what is pure, unadulterated drivel, which can do nothing for the better management of your affairs. The truth is, at this time we are borrowing significant sums of money to sustain our current standard of living. As laudable as this objective is, it cannot be sustained, and it just can't go on this way. And we must get out of this situation as quickly as possible, otherwise our future will be endangered. Of the $93 billion of the public debt I just mentioned, $38 billion of it has been incurred by the state enterprise sector. And you would have heard me in my January address to the nation talk about Petrotrin. Since then, a major review of the company's business has been undertaken, and a new board with a clear mandate to fix the chronic problems as they exist at Petrotrin has been installed. The board has settled in and has begun to focus on all aspects of management and operations at the company, including allegations of questionable measurements of fiscalized oil in the farm out program. Work is going on apace at Petrotrin. With respect to technology, while we navigate the turbulent economic waters, the trends are very encouraging, but we are not yet out of the woods. We have put in place an investment facilitation framework building on our single electronic window, and we are implementing the WTO trade facilitation agreement. We have been steadily reducing the time and cost of importing and exporting. We have been reducing the time in business startups, and we are putting an automated system in to deal with the construction sector. Ladies and gentlemen, up until September 2017, TT BizLink, the brainchild of the PNM in 2009, has recorded 1.1 million transactions and registered over 8,000 users from 2,700 companies. How many of you are aware that your PNM-created TT BizLink received the award for excellence in electronic government in December 2016 by the Network of E-Government Leaders for Latin America and the Caribbean? We are going on to do e-mobile inspection at the Bureau of Standards. E-mobile that will allow inspection of food and drugs at the inspectorate. We are moving on to e-maritime services, e-utilities module for WASA, and of course, we are going on to ensure that we get the benefit of technology to bring about improvement in our performance and to ensure that our country moves up the ladder as a place to do business. Much more activity is taking place behind the scenes to set the stage for diversification of the economy, especially in the spheres of agriculture and fisheries, manufacturing, the maritime industry, the creative industry, agro-processing, ICT business, and the new foreign exchange export facility, and the promotion of the ETEC Industrial Park. As I speak to you now, plans are afoot to launch the live music district. Ladies and gentlemen, a great deal of our interest is being revived in the Tamana InTech Park, the compound specifically designed for technology and innovation-driven enterprises. We are currently giving consideration to requests from both international and local investors to set up operations within the facility. After months of discussion, an international consortium has completed a feasibility study on their interest in an aspect of the aluminum industry in Trinidad. A presentation on this proposal is scheduled to be made to the Energy Subcommittee of the Cabinet on Wednesday of this week. You have had more than your fair share of talk about the deterioration in the oil and gas prices, as well as decline in the production levels, all of which we were greeted by on our assumption in office. I am pleased to report that we have been addressing these issues with significant success. You may recall that well before 2015, a serious gas shortage had developed at Point Lisas, and some plants were being closed down, and others struggled to operate on reduced supplies, and some were on month-to-month contracts since 2013. Many of these vital gas contracts were coming to their expiry date, and no serious new gas price negotiations were advanced by the government, which owns 100% of NGC, which is the state's sole gas aggregator and marketer in Trinidad and Tobago. Instead of dealing with this very critical situation, the last government was too busy trying to clean out the NGC bank account, the last of which was scraped out to award a $1 billion contract to SIS for a water treatment plant of dubious quality at Sealots. The contractor on that project ran away as soon as you changed the government. The NGC had to initiate court proceedings to prevent them from running away with the equipment too. It was the PNM government to the rescue when we immediately guided the new board of the NGC to commence and progress these very delicate gas price negotiations with BP, our largest producer. In the absence of a new negotiated gas price, all the major producing companies had virtually frozen their investments going forward. That never attracted the attention of the ex-experts who have a lot to say about oil and gas now. The negotiations between NGC and BP progressed well, but eventually both sides came to a point where there was no closure from either end. As Prime Minister, I traveled to Houston to open the door for NGC to be able to have access to the top decision makers in BP, and for those executives to put their best and improved offer to the NGC. The approach worked. Both sides were able to come to an agreement, and we had a gas price agreement of mutual satisfaction. In Houston, we stimulated the completion of these negotiations between BP and NGC for a gas sales agreement. And of course, this opened the door immediately to $5 billion over the next 5 years, a commitment from BP. A similar $5 billion was immediately triggered by EOG and others who have set about to increase their operations in Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, these kinds of good news hardly make news in Trinidad and Tobago. Looking ahead towards the medium and longer term, steps were taken to secure additional supplies of new gas from ordinarily unavailable gas fields, even as our producing areas were maturing and becoming increasingly depleted. We wanted to make sure that Trinidad and Tobago remains a serious player in the hydrocarbon business, even when supplies within our borders diminish over time. This business is basically our lifeblood, and the vision is to keep that blood flowing for as long as possible. It is also what we know and what we do well. And even as we diversify, there are few alternatives that could give us the kinds of returns that we can extract from oil and gas. To this end, we pursued with our closest neighbor, Venezuela, and eventually signed an agreement with the government of Venezuela to bring gas from their Dragon field off the north coast of Paria Peninsula onto the existing Hibiscus platform in northwest Trinidad, and from there to be piped further to Point Lisas and Point Fortin. And these to sustain the industries we have there, and I dare say to grow more production at those locations. This far-reaching initiative is proceeding apace with Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, and Shell. Ladies and gentlemen, with all these things, with no fuss, no fanfare, no string band of loafers and freeloaders gathering around us, and above all, no cosmeticians and no under-the-table deals, because we are the PNM and we are the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Those well-planned and professionally negotiated business and investment transactions, all conducted above board with transparency, decency, and integrity, are the cornerstones that have now restored Trinidad and Tobago to its pride of place in the energy sector. And we can go on and on. There's one of their mouthpieces who drags himself out of bed every day only to parrot that we have no plan. If what they say is true, then what do you call what I've just told you? What then is Vision 2030? It lives. We don't only believe, but we are confident that our country believes, and that we have a proud past, and we also have a very bright future. Add to this current operations at the Juniper project, BP is producing an additional 590 million standard cubic feet of gas. The Angeline project is underway for another 600 million standard cubic feet per day. EOG's second project is good for another 275 million standard cubic feet. And of course, there are other operations taking place, operations on our continental shelf, where we are looking at significant production in the months and years ahead. We are in close contact with BP, where we are engaged in hopeful discussions that we here in Trinidad and Tobago can compete successfully and win the bid to build the Cassia platform in La Brea. There are many benefits to be had for our local skilled people. So we say to BP that, and to the fledgling Guyanese oil industry, bring your platform blueprints and come. We have the skills and we can build them here in Trinidad and Tobago. Ladies and gentlemen, that loud minority criticized the Minister of Finance when he imposed a 12.5% royalty on gas at the wellhead. The royalty was already applied on oil and is now being extended to apply to gas. Do you see something wrong with that? In my discussions with BP, I have said to the leadership in that company, you are doing a good job in Trinidad and Tobago to the satisfaction and for the benefit of your shareholders all over the world. But as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, I have shareholders too. And my shareholders are the people of Trinidad and Tobago. They are the original owners of the resource, and they too need to be satisfied. And it cannot be, while the grass is growing, our horse is starving. It was a very open and candid discussion. And I told them that the PNM government would never have agreed to some of the arrangements which we met in force, and which could lead to a massive drying up of our tax revenues in the way that it has come to pass. I can tell you that they understand very well where we're coming from and who we represent. And they understand Trinidad and Tobago as a sovereign country with a proud past and a bright future, respecting and willing to work with our corporate citizens. Our discussions continue in a very respectful and professional manner. And the future for BP, for Trinidad and Tobago, and for all our corporate investors remains very bright. In the United States, royalties for onshore production range from 12.5% to 30%. Offshore production range from 12.5% to 18%. In Canada, 10% to 45%. In Ecuador, oil royalties range from 12.5% to 18.5%. So what is wrong if in Trinidad and Tobago we introduce a royalty tax of 12.5%? We would still be among the lowest royalty in the world. So when anybody tells you that the government taxation on the multi-billion-dollar oil industry is going to cause us to lose business, that is just so much hooey. All it is meaning is that we are asking them to take a little less and give us a little more. So once and for all, we are putting our energy fiscal regime back in tandem with international best practice. No vice versa arrangements. Discipline and integrity are the order of the day. And the Petroleum Pricing Committee of the Ministry of Energy, which had been dormant or inactive for years, has now been reinstated and will be put to work. It is no secret that all is not well in our home business at Petrotrin. Petrotrin's debt is now a massive $13 billion. The refinery is losing money on every barrel of oil, and the latest assessment indicates to the government that that will not change in the foreseeable future. But all is not lost. We have set up a specialist committee to examine the arrangements, and we will ensure that we take the required action to bring about the required turnaround. Ladies and gentlemen, the PNM enjoys an unparalleled record of success in the energy sector. Countries around the world speak of the Trinidad and Tobago model. No administration understands the energy sector more than the PNM. PNM purchased it. PNM conceptualized it. PNM created it. And here now, the PNM has been called to rescue it. And we will rescue it, we will nurture it, we will protect it, and preserve it. So in spite of our current economic challenges, our energy sector marches on as we look towards that bright future of economic expansion. Ladies and gentlemen, the property tax is part of the law of Trinidad and Tobago. And let me repeat that. The property tax is part of the law in Trinidad and Tobago. Every minister of government in the cabinet, which I lead, including myself as Prime Minister, had to take an oath of office that we will uphold the law and the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago. In this law, lower rates will apply to agricultural and residential property as compared to industrial property. There is also a provision in the law that will allow for temporary or permanent waiver in extenuating circumstances where a residential property owner is demonstrably unable to pay any tax on his or her property. Anyone who is familiar with the economic plight of Trinidad and Tobago today will know that the proceeds of this tax are desperately needed, especially at this time. Those who squandered your money, raped your treasury, mismanaged your affairs, enriched themselves along the way, have appointed themselves abolisher of this tax. They have taken this matter to court and are raising frivolous objections at every turn. They would have you believe that the proceeds of this tax are for the PNM. So by blocking it, they are somehow doing something to the PNM, or that they are denying the PNM money. Nothing is further from the truth. It is all about themselves, and it is you, the average citizen, who are being denied the benefit of these taxes. And you have persons who should be contributing by way of these taxes, getting away with windfall millions without paying their fair share to the national coffers, even as they continue to get the full service from the depleted treasury. Trinidad and Tobago is probably the only country in the world where property tax does not exist to aid in raising revenue to service the country. The UNC knows why, but they dare not tell you the truth. The government will continue to pursue this matter diligently until we come to a place where this traditional and widely accepted revenue is collected for the benefit of the wider national community. Work on establishing the much-needed Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority is well in hand and underway. All current staff will have options to transfer to the authority under terms and conditions no less favorable to those which they engage in their current job location. Those who do not wish to transfer to the agency will have the right to exercise an option to be kept in the public service at a position no less favorable to where they are now. It is common knowledge from anecdotal and scientific sources that there's a huge loss of government revenue due to entrenched dysfunctionality and other reasons in the current arrangements. All the best advice obtained even before this government came into office pointed to the need for this new agency. Recently, your PNM government had a study done on the tax gap in the Trinidad and Tobago economy. And by tax gap, I mean taxes that ought to have been collected, taxes that can be collected, but taxes that are not being collected. Permit me to quote for you a few lines from the report, which says to the government, a report received in September 2017 says this, and I quote, "When disaggregated, we found the corporate tax gap to be between 5.1 billion Trinidad and Tobago dollars and $6.6 billion. The VAT gap we found between 1.9 billion and 2.4 billion. What that is saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that in struggling Trinidad and Tobago, studies have shown that there is an uncollected tax base of $7 to $9 billion left unattended. With respect to the levels of taxation, the report had this to say, and I quote, "For corporations facing a 25% statutory rate, the effective rate was found to be 14 to 18%. What that means is that even though the law says that they can be taxed at 35% or 25%, what tax they're really paying after they do their fancy footwork and their fancy accounts, the effective tax rate is really 14 to 18%. For those corporations facing a rate of 30%, the effective rate is really 17 to 21%. For VAT at 15%, the effective rate was seen to be between 8 and 11%. And for VAT as 12.5% as it is now, the effective rate is between 7 and 9%. So for those like the opposition who appoint themselves champions and defenders of the overtaxed, these are not my figures. This is data scientifically obtained by experts who have reported to the government of Trinidad and Tobago. What the country needs is a better, more efficient tax collection and enforcement system. I want you to take careful note of who has a problem with rectifying the current situation. Take careful note of those who are saying, leave it so. Take careful note of whether they are in the corporate sector, in the public service, or are individuals of means in Trinidad and Tobago. Because the current unsatisfactory arrangements suit some people very well to the disadvantage of the wider national community. A review of expenditure on subsidies and transfers downstream, especially to improve the efficiency of public spending on health, education, and social services to avoid overlapping of our social safety net and to eliminate waste and corruption in these subsectors. Implementation of the procurement legislation can be had at any time. The government is prepared to proclaim that law anytime. We are now awaiting the regulator, which is a requirement before we proclaim, and that regulator is to be appointed by His Excellency the President. He alone can appoint the regulator. As soon as a regulator is appointed, the government will proclaim the law and the new procurement legislation will come into force. Just a few days ago, we launched the program for stimulation of at least 500 small to medium-sized enterprises. And we are moving towards making Trinidad and Tobago both a preferred location for business process outsourcing and the region's international financial center. A new policy is being rolled out to enhance the competitiveness of Trinidad and Tobago's yachting industry. Following up on the unfortunate devastation by multi-hurricane strikes in the Northern Antilles, now is a good time for us to remind the sailing and yachting fraternity that Trinidad can provide an all-year safe haven just outside the path frequently traveled by the annual hurricanes. With respect to housing, of great significance is the PNM's revised strategy to satisfy the demand for housing accommodation. Our intention is to shift the HDC away from housing for middle-income earners who can adequately be accommodated by the private sector, which is now incentivized to supply affordable units at an accelerated rate on public and private lands. Meanwhile, as the government, we return the HDC to its original moorings to focus on the provision of affordable housing for lower and lower middle-income families with a bit more focus being placed on economically reasonable rental accommodation in the wider range of its solutions. A program is already in train to replace the aging fleet of PTSD units, and in spite of scarce resources, we are intending to continue the policy where maxi-taxi owners operate exempted from motor vehicle tax and VAT. These will contribute to them staying in the business as we go forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we have achieved great success in cleaning up the UNC corrupt practices which contaminated the food card system, reducing the food card demand from over 60,000 to less than 28,000, with no deserving recipient being left out. I want to repeat that. While we are satisfying the needs for all the deserving recipients, we have been able to reduce the number of food cards being operated from 60,000 to 28,000. What that means is that food card distribution is now under proper government control, no longer being distributed from car trunks of members of parliament, from constituency offices, and at rallies of political parties. And you, the taxpayer, are ensuring that those who are entitled are the ones who draw on this program. We have also taken steps to establish a national register of persons with disabilities, to ensure that those persons and those persons only access what the government has to offer, and to ensure that those persons in those conditions who may not now be accessing that program, that they too access that program. Ladies and gentlemen, 2017 has been filled with successes both in the local and international sports arena. We owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to our sportsmen and women. In spite of our limited resources, we will continue to support them. And of course, as we support them, we know that they will continue to give up their best and moving to higher heights as they continue to achieve what they set out to achieve at the personal level. Their frequent successes always help to lift the national spirit on any given day. 2017 has been a remarkable year for sporting participation for Trinidad and Tobago. For a nation of 1.2 million people, we are punching in the heavyweight class. Ladies and gentlemen, we are taking steps to ensure that our sportsmen and women occupy their rightful place in the nation. A potential for sports tourism as a viable option for economic diversification is being pursued, and we are actively interfacing with regional and international bodies who see Trinidad and Tobago as a veritable sporting mecca for a variety of sporting disciplines. On the diplomatic front, we have looked at our interests and we have agreed to establish missions in the Middle East, in Abu Dhabi, as well as in Barbados. Both of these missions being put in place within the context of our wider vision of where Trinidad and Tobago wants to be from whenever they're established going forward. During my visit to Belize recently, I signed the protocol amending the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, the purpose of which was to incorporate into CARICOM the National Security and Law Enforcement Agency as a unit of CARICOM. Ladies and gentlemen, I am sure that many of you are aware that the THA has obtained an international credit rating, and that in the not too distant future will enjoy the further opportunity to borrow approved sums of money on its own initiative to accelerate Tobago's development program. One of the first projects that may fall into this arrangement is the construction of a new terminal building in Tobago, which the cabinet is discussing and may come to an agreement to have such a facility financed under a BOLT agreement, a build, own, lease, transfer, which means that we can have the facility built without the expense being put on the exchequer account, and the builder will lease it back to the government for a specific period of time, will pay the lease, and at the end of a period of time, the facility comes to the state. I'm sure that another item of good news for Tobago is that the draft legislation to grant self-government and a greater devolution of powers for Tobago is currently in its final stages before it reaches the cabinet. The legislation will be tabled before the Parliament imminently, and from there it will expeditiously move to the Law Reform Commission for urgent attention. Air and sea transport between Trinidad and Tobago are engaging our very close attention, and we have ensured that whatever is to be pursued in this regard will have some direct inputs from the people of Tobago. We will keep you abreast of progress being made. Given the procurement process which the port is engaged in at the moment, I expect that an additional passenger ferry will be on the route very soon. The coming of this vessel, bringing additional capacity and more reliable sailings, will go a long way towards eliminating the hardships which have been associated with this service in the recent months. For Tobagonians in particular, the end of inconveniences and disappointments is near. Ladies and gentlemen, I have just shared with you an outstanding record of some of the achievements of our great party in government, undertaken during a period of great difficulty and harsh economic adversity. I know it looks like a long list, but it really is only 25 months of work. 25 months after the scorched earth, reckless spending policies of the UNC, after the cabal and associates, who today can't even be trusted by the founder of their own party to respect their party's constitution. 25 months ago, you, the PNM, you rallied the nation to resoundingly reject the 5-year rampage and pillage that passed for government that shamed this nation on a daily basis. Having been confined to the opposition, they miraculously now have all the answers to the problems that they ignored during their 5-year period. Everything to them is now simple. Everything has a simple and clear solution, and that is if you only listen to them. They now demand caring, as if being pushed around in a little yellow toy boat in ankle-deep muddy water with a silly grin on one's face is how caring is demonstrated. That is their leadership, which prays for a flood so they could mobilize their moribund political party for a snap election in themselves. They are now trying to portray themselves as wellsprings of caring, gushing the milk of human kindness, after they distinguished their reign by being identified as the most corrupt government this country could ever imagine. Now they are daily trying to revise history, hoping that you forget them. No, we will not forget. We will put our shoulders to the wheel. We will sacrifice as required to save our country, to give our children a future, but we will not forget. We will prosecute them where the evidence is found, but we will not forget. We will forgive, but we will never forget. Your government was determined to execute on your behalf, and we have done so boldly, imaginatively, and fearlessly. Of course, had economic fortunes favored us, there is no telling the full extent to which we would have exceeded your expectation and ours. We are grateful for your patience and understanding in not having lived up in areas where perhaps your demands may have been higher than the delivery could have afforded. But given the circumstances, we believe that we have done much more than reasonably well. We have done well. We will now move on to do even better. Suffice it to say that we shall be in closer communication so that you, when the time comes, will be in a position not only to be aware of the tremendous strides which as a nation we are making, but you will be fortified to defend your party and your country from the vicious and vile attempts by those on the other side whose only motivation is to strip from their brothers and sisters the wealth of the land, which is our true and uncompromising inheritance. In conclusion, I want you to know that the way ahead is still littered with unpredictable roadblocks and uncertainties. But come what may, we, the PNM, are eminently geared to treat with all events, the good, the bad, and the UNC. In stormy times like these, the ship of state needs a steady and trustworthy hand. The PNM is that steady hand, and I am your captain. Rest assured that your government will continue to be vigilant and watchful and be positive and patient as we navigate the turbulent waters in sight of better days ahead and an improved quality of life for all our citizens. We thank you for your patience, which you have displayed in listening to our account of our stewardship at this 47th convention. As we stay true to our Constitution, as we always do, I exhort you to form new party groups in all communities, hold your meetings, have functioning executives and vibrant memberships, and take part in all national debates. I thank and congratulate the organizers of this excellent event, and I propose that next year's event, this glorious spectacle of a PNM convention, would be held in Tobago where we meet our brothers and sisters there. Hopefully, at that time, at the end of next year, we'll be in a position to tell Tobagonians that Parliament has acted on their ambitions. May Almighty God continue to bless you, bless the PNM, and bless all the people of this land of Trinidad and Tobago, which sustains us and which we love so much. Long live the PNM! Great is the PNM! Great is the PNM! And we shall prevail.